It really takes so much grit to find a position in this very wild job market. You have to be visible on LinkedIn. You have to show up to networking events. You have to start volunteering to things. You really have to exhaust every single avenue you can think of. And it's so sad to say that you have to go through all these things. But as someone that's living it and has done it, it really does make a difference.
Welcome to the Business of Marketing. I'm A. Lee Judge. We're entering our 5th season of the Business of Marketing, and I'm so excited because it's going to be very different this time. There's someone that I met through LinkedIn whose story has inspired me so much that I want a co-host. I want somebody who we can talk marketing together. We can interview people who are in the marketing world and the business world together. And this person struck me because of their grit and the personal brand they're building. And the interesting part is the brand is being built while they're in between careers. So I think, well, I may not have her for very long, but at least during the journey, we'll learn a lot together. So welcome the new co-host of the Business of Marketing, Rosio Assuna.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lee. It's a pleasure. Honestly, your the DM that you sent on LinkedIn was awesome. You know, it was really great meeting you at Content Marketing World, and who would have thought, X months from now, here we are.
Yeah. And I'm glad that, I'm a bit of an introvert in public, despite being on stage. When I'm off stage, I'm not the one to walk up to people. And so I'm glad you walked up to me and I got a chance to meet you in person, and it made this internet connection real. And I'm looking forward to the conversations. And this episode, I want to talk about something that is really on a lot of folks' minds right now, and that you've become somewhat of an expert in because you're going through this phase. You're building this personal brand, which may not have been your purpose, but because of your grit and the way you've been sharing the learning experience of looking for the next phase of your career, you've learned a lot and you've been sharing a lot. And it's so valuable to others who are in that same position that I wanted to ask you about that, get your take on what's going on in the market right now, and maybe even inspire some folks who are also in the same phase to understand what's going on. And so tell me, what have you seen out there as you've been out in the jungle trying to see what the next phase in your career is going to be?
So it's the Wild West. I think we've seen it all. If you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, you've seen the posts where layoff after layoff, right? So 2025 is pretty huge with layoffs, and then 2026 continued with that. Large companies. I was taking numbers. UPS 30K, Amazon 16, Nestle 16K, Meta and Tesla keep going. So it's just one of those things where the market is so insane. There's so many people applying for one role. Very talented people that are, suffering through this layoff that is obviously something that they didn't bet on, something that everyone's suffering through. And it's just creating this huge saturated market of incredibly talented folks. And then obviously it's for lack of a better term, a seller market, right? So employers are now out there able to kind of wait for that unicorn. But also with that, so many people are just not even getting a second chance or any kind of chance whatsoever. So it's really quite an insane job market right now.
I heard the phrase this morning that we're kind of in a no fire, no hire phase. Like, we've had a lot of firing, a lot of layoffs, but at the same time, companies are being slow to let go of people, and then they're not replacing people who are leaving. So what are you seeing in terms of what are your thoughts on that in terms of companies, the turnover and the job openings? Do you think, I guess you have some insight when it comes to like what kinds of jobs are opening?
Yes. So what I'm seeing is I feel like everyone's kind of afraid of AI is going to take your job, right? So the whole idea of, the layoff saying that AI has really come in and gotten rid of some repetitive positions. But I feel that's going to suffer because, a lot of people are going to see that, okay, AI can do a certain thing, but next year or the next couple of months or whatever it might be in time frame, we're going to have to rehire for those jobs because AI isn't 100%, right? So a lot of the jobs that I'm seeing, I'm in the marketing industry, obviously. Lots of other industries are still looking, but marketing manager jobs are still open. Director jobs are still open. I am seeing that weird positions where there's companies that are opening director mid-level positions and positioning them at a salary range of a coordinator. So it's really interesting to see all of these positions sometimes with companies knowing that unfortunately there's a lot of people out there. Someone's going to take it, right? But as you know, you've been in marketing sales, when you're giving someone who's an entry-level position the salary of a coordinator, like that's not really going to do well in the long term, right?
Marketers and sales leaders, if you want to close more deals and drive real revenue growth, you need cash. And I don't mean money. I'm talking about my new book, Cash, the 4 keys to better sales, smarter marketing, and a supercharged revenue machine. It gives you a proven framework to improve the 4 areas that impact revenue the most: communication, alignment, systems, and honesty. You need a stronger sales and marketing engine, and this book will show you how to build it. Get your copy now at aleejudge.com/cash. Now, back to the content. I think a lot of what is going on from the employer standpoint is that, well, the problem of you can't hire somebody at a manager level if they've never been through the first levels, which means that, how does somebody become a manager if they don't have the experience of being a first-year marketer, intern, or whatever? But at the same time, you got folks who have that experience who are out there, and they should be getting these manager, even, director, VP positions, but perhaps the price of what's being paid is being drawn down by this, I guess, temporary, I hope, belief that they can get people for less money without paying for the experience.
Yeah, and there's obviously a huge amount of people out there that are talented and able to fulfill that role obviously at a correct salary. But it's really insane to see a lot of the things that are happening that, I speak to a lot of other people that are in between as well, and what they're seeing. And I'm seeing the same thing. There's people that are ghosting. I think one of the things that I see a lot is the anger on LinkedIn posts where people are very angry about ghosting, in the sense that, they apply for a role and they go through several rounds and then never hear back. And I think that's not very empathetic. That hurts the company. As a company, that person's going to eventually find a role. If that company doesn't complete the circle and say, hey, we're moving on to someone else, the ghosting is going to stay in that person's mind. And what if down the line, that person comes up with that company as a potential vendor and they ignore the vendor because they had that experience? So the ghosting thing in my marketing brain is always thinking, close the loop. You've already started someone in the process. And 2, it's a branding thing too for the company. They don't think sometimes long term about that effect they have on the person immediately and in the future.
So speaking of long term, what does that do for the person who's applying and then they get vocal on somewhere like LinkedIn about being ghosted? Couldn't that harm them in the long run if they've already spoken out about a company or about being ghosted? Like, what's the perception of that person if they lashed out about being ghosted?
I think personally for me, everyone has control of their personal brand and can say whatever, they can say about their experiences. But with having opinions, you really have to be safe about what you say, right? If an employer searches you, they're going to find that, right? So you have to really position yourself in a safe way as well. You have to really be careful. You really have to know that these things live online for a long time. So really be careful about what you say. If your whole personal brand is, I'm going to say everything and anything, and that's who you are, then that makes sense. But if you are going to be working for a company, not yourself, you might have to really safeguard what you say and be safe. Personal brand will live on for years.
I'll tell you a story along those lines where the last job that I actually worked in corporate, I interviewed in September. I had 3 interviews between September and the early October with 3 different levels of management in 3 different countries because it's a global company. And so I'm thinking, okay, I've made round 3. I've talked to the VP and all these different levels, and they ghost me. After all that, 3 interviews I had to prepare for and be nervous through and give 3 interviews, and they ghost me early October. And then I reach out to them late October I guess, early November and say, hey, what happened? I mean, we had all these interviews. I haven't heard from you in weeks. What's going on? And they said, well, we're doing some restructuring. We haven't forgotten about you, but we're thinking, we're looking at other positions. I didn't know what that exactly meant, if that meant other people or other, whatever. Still ghosted me the rest of November. Beginning of December, they called me up for another interview. And I'm like, why am I interviewing again? They didn't exactly explain it on the first and second additional interviews. So this is really the fourth and fifth. The sixth interview, it was explained that it was a different division of the same company that had a better higher up position available that they thought I was better fit for. So the reality was my first three interviews they found out that I was overqualified for what they interviewed me for, but they did want me somehow or another. And so then they started up another round for a higher position, and they hired me like mid-December. So from September to December, I was strung along, so to speak. And they said, oh, by the way, since it's so late December, just start January 1st. And can you be in Switzerland the 6th? I was like, what? I'll get hired and I haven't even got my badge yet and I'm already getting a ticket. And so that was a case where if I had lashed out or been vocal about being ghosted, which I certainly felt like I was, if that had gotten the rounds to those people that I had said that about, it would have definitely squashed that opportunity when it came up, because I didn't know who was looking at my LinkedIn profile, for example, during that time. But it would have been a pretty bad stain to say this person we're trying to hire was out there saying, oh, woe is me, or saying that this company ghosted me. So I would say to anybody applying, be careful what you say online. Even if you don't name the company, it shows your personality, I would say.
Yeah, your reaction is definitely something that shows your colors, right? Your true colors. With any kind of situation I go through, I always try to see it as a learning lesson, not just for me, but for other people that are going through it. So if, for example, I never hear back from certain rounds, I'll say, I was really excited. Here's what I learned, the key takeaways, and, hope anyone else that's, going through the same situation learns from what I've gone through.
I wanted to ask you, are there any standout weird things you've seen in job requirements? Like, I remember at one point, and this is years and years ago, but I remember seeing things like, required 10 years social media experience at a time when social media was 5, 6 years old. So, or like someone saying now, required, 7 years of AI experience when, nobody, especially in marketing, has been thinking about AI for 7 years unless you're a data scientist. So have you seen any things that you think are maybe at least unreasonable in some of the job descriptions lately?
The one that I've always seen is the remote. I feel like the positions that I apply to in 2025, I get more success on in-house roles. Remote is more competitive, right? Because there's so many people from out of state that can apply. So it might be marketing manager, parentheses, remote. But all the way to the bottom, it says, in person. So that's not really a remote role. That's a hybrid role potentially, right? So being clear about what you really mean. And sometimes I feel like when they do that, it's because they get an influx of people applying, right? You're going to get a really great set of people applying and you can just filter out who you want.
Yeah, and I guess that's them marketing the job versus just being blunt about what it is. Because even job posts have SEO. Like, we're going to look for things that, oh, I'm looking for a remote job, and this job comes up because it says remote, but then the fine print, remote, but I need to be close enough to come in on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Like, that's not quite remote. That's local. They should call it local remote. Like, you have a certain number of days you have to come in and just say it. Obviously, local remote versus just completely remote.
Yep. And going back to your points there, the things that I've seen is sometimes I think people are getting wiser. So back months ago when I started applying to positions, they used to have what you had example, 6 years of AI when, it really hasn't been that much. Now they used to do like 10 years of an entry-level position to be, an entry-level marketing manager, but now they're lowering it. I'm seeing that now they're lowering it instead of, let's say, 10 for a mid-level marketing manager, it's 3 years, 5 years. So I don't know what the strategy is on that. Maybe they learned from last year, but I'm seeing a lot of them not lowering the bar, but just opening up to more people, maybe to the fact that there's a lot of people out there going through layoffs. So maybe they're leaning into being nicer to having more applications. I don't know.
I think they're probably finding people who are qualified, they just don't have as much time in. I mean, especially considering we hop positions more often than we used to. Especially in industries. Like, for example, if you're a marketer in the industrial building field or whatever, you may not have 3 years in industrial building, but you may have 5 in marketing. And I know some resume or some job descriptions would have a certain number of time in that industry where it's pretty much irrelevant as long as you have the time in your field of marketing, for example. But that's interesting that that's shortening. That's good because, I mean, some of that experience, some of that time is time in learning. And from a positive standpoint, when it comes to AI, you may not have to learn as much. You just have to understand more, like have experience. Maybe 3 years of experience is enough. You may not know everything, but you have enough experience to utilize AI as your coworker to make up for that difference in time.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably where it's going, which is good. I really believe that we have it's an unfortunate situation with the layoffs, but there's so many talented people out there that hopefully the jobs will open up more so that everyone gets filled into a new position in 2026.
And I think that for a lot of it, AI is a cop out. I think there's a lot more going on with the economy and with, whenever there's job security, there's also business security. Like the businesses are insecure on what's going to be next. I was listening to someone this morning talking about if your business can be affected by tariffs, then you can't make a plan to spend X number of dollars in the next year because you don't know what you have to spend. Like you don't know what's going to be imposed on you. So if you're looking at your budgeting and it's okay, how many dollars come in, how many can be allocated to employees, you can't even plan that past 6-8 months because you don't know what that money is, which leads to this hiring freeze because they just don't know. And that's the real trickle down. The trickle down is that if companies don't know what to do, they don't know who to hire, and that leaves employees or potential employees waiting for them to make a move.
Great. It is hopefully the hiring freeze unfreezes because there's a lot of really, like I said, really amazing people out there, and I've seen it. I've personally met so many great people off LinkedIn who message me after seeing one of my posts and say, hey, your post resonated with me. What is it that you're doing, to get you referrals or whatnot, and then I go ahead and meet with them on Zoom or on video, and I share what I've done. And it really allows them to kind of think through their different strategy of how to go ahead and try to find a job themselves with something they didn't even think about before.
Well, Rosio, I want to kind of wrap up on this note. I mean, I reached out to you knowing or feeling in my heart that I won't have you for long. And so I'm looking forward to this season of having conversations with you and us both inquiring, asking other people questions during the show and learning more about marketing and sales together as we talk to the industry and share with others. I'll tell the audience, given what I've seen of you and your grit, you won't be available for long, but I hope that even after somebody snatches you up, you'll still work with me on this show because it's going to be great. I really look forward to it. What kind of parting words do you have for this episode before people who are out there on a job hunt right now and who don't know whether to just, send resumes or boost their personal brand or be vocal or be quiet? What do you think some of the best routes to go would be?
Be vocal. I feel like a lot of people, I'm seeing my feed on LinkedIn with people finally saying, I've been laid off, I need help. The first thing is to ask for help. If you're just kind of in the background, hoping that someone will notice, you really have to be vocal about your situation and what you need. Whether that's reaching out to coworkers or someone that you might know, it really takes so much grit to find a position in this very wild job market. You really need to be not obviously, doing everything you can by, calling all your potential networking folks. You have to be visible on LinkedIn. You have to show up to networking events. You have to start volunteering to things. You really have to exhaust every single avenue you can think of. And it's so sad to say that you have to go through all these things. But as someone that's living it and has done it, it really does make a difference. You have to exhaust every single avenue you can think of. And sometimes even keep going when you think that's it, because, the end goal is to find employment. So you have to keep going. It's just an exhaustive situation, but I know that everyone's going to find a position. I know there's people out there that have been looking for months, years. It's going to happen. Don't give up. It's going to happen.
Awesome. Mic drop. So this is where we would normally say, I would ask a guest, how can they find you? But the audience listening right now, they will find you on the business of marketing going forward. So I look forward to, and thank you for joining me. I just want to tell you, thank you for not joining for one episode, but joining as a co-host. I'm looking forward to it, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate all our conversations. I can't wait to learn from all our guests and from you.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Marketing podcast, a show brought to you by ContentMonster.com, the producer of B2B digital marketing content. Show notes can be found on ContentMonster.com, as well as aleejudge.com.